Edmund Campion has always inspired me because he could have avoided his martyrdom. He chose the hard way, the way of love of Christ above all things, even to excruciating torture and execution. I have even named one of my children after him because he stood up against the prevailing ideas of the time and was willing to pay the ultimate price for it. St. Edmund Campion led a heroic life. In 1534, Henry VIII formalized his break from the Catholic Church. In the Act of Supremacy, Catholic clergy and bishops, and indeed all English subjects, were required to swear an oath of royal supremacy. In the oath, Henry was called the supreme head of the Church in England. Some clergy resisted. Some ardent Catholics, such as John Fisher and the Archbishop of Canterbury, William Warham, resisted publicly. Many of the clergy bowed to pressure. Some did not, such as St. John Fisher and St. Thomas More. The oath went something like this: I do utterly testify and declare in my conscience that the Queen's Highness is the only supreme governor of the realm, as well as in all spiritual or ecclesiastical things or causes, etc. So help me God. To Fisher, More, and others, this was too far, as it denied the supremacy of the Pope over the Church. So as not to cause unrest or even rebellion, not all were required to take it immediately, but only when asked to do so. The crown started with the clergy and senior officials. Those who refused to swear the oath were considered traitors. Since the law did not have specific penalties, there was leeway as to how to proceed. For St. John Fisher, that meant hanging, drawing, and quartering. For St. Thomas More, it meant beheading. At any rate, being a Catholic priest was suddenly extremely dangerous in England. St. Edmund Campion was born just a few years later on July 25, 1540. He received a grammar school education. He did well in his studies, even being chosen as the schoolboy to greet Queen Mary in Latin on one occasion. He was accepted to St. John's College at Oxford and was a junior fellow at age 17. Campion stood out for his academic prowess and speaking skills. He received his degrees and became a fellow. He also impressed Queen Elizabeth on one occasion when she visited Oxford. The success and worldly allurements were open to him. He won powerful patrons such as William Cecil, the Earl of Leicester, and the Bishop of Gloucester. They convinced Campion to take the oath of supremacy and become a deacon in the Church of England. Campion soon regretted that choice, however, and when his proctorship ended, he left a promising life and career in Oxford for the then backwaters of Ireland. Campion arrived in Dublin awaiting the reopening of Dublin University, which had temporarily been closed. He was a tutor and author and met others who encouraged his Catholic conscience. Campion was soon seen as a Catholic-minded Anglican, which is a very dangerous thing to be. His conscience continued to bother him over his oath, and he crossed to England in disguise and assumed a name to see the trial of the martyr Blessed John Story. Story had served Queen Mary and had also been a member of Parliament. However, upon refusing to attend Anglican services, he was arrested and sent to Marshalsea. He escaped to Flanders and managed to live in exile for many years, before one day being lured onto an English boat and abducted back to England. Story's story has many similarities with Campion's, as we will see. Story was sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, which was carried out on June 1st, 1571, at Tyburn. Campion, in attendance at the trial, felt his duty as a Catholic return. He soon left England and headed for the Low Countries, just as Story had done. Campion made his way to Douai in the Low Countries and was reconciled with the Church. He received the Holy Eucharist for the first time since his public oath and would never turn back. He was accepted into the seminary there and trained to become a priest. When news of his departure reached England, William Cecil said that England had lost one of its diamonds. After finishing his theology coursework, Campion left Douai on a barefoot pilgrimage to Rome. He was determined to become a Jesuit. In April 1573, he was accepted and entered the novitiate. Since there was no English province yet due to the suppression of the Catholic Church there, Campion was sent to Brünn, Austria. Campion continued to write and publish sacred dramas. He also taught in Prague and was ordained in 1578. Shortly after his ordination, a Jesuit mission to England was organized. Campion had a vision in the garden at Brünn, in which Our Lady foretold his martyrdom. Campion volunteered to join the mission to England. His friends in Prague painted a prophetic garland of roses in his cell with the inscription, Edmund Campion, Martyr. The mission departed Rome for England. When Campion arrived in London, England, on June 24, 1581, he was disguised as a merchant, clothed and funded by a young Catholic convert. His mission was to support those wavering under the English tyranny. Campion preached, celebrated Mass, performed his priestly duties in very dangerous conditions. Campion also had a zeal for winning converts from Protestantism, but that also made his mission more dangerous. Eventually, he had to flee to the north of England. He continued to write against the Church of England. After some time, he returned to London, but once again had to flee as his presence was definitely found out. A man named George Eliot was pursuing him. Eliot finally caught up with Campion on July 17, 1581, near Wantage in Berkshire. Campion was bound hand and foot and was paraded backwards on a horse with a sign in his hat saying, "Seditious Jesuit." Campion was put into the Tower of London in a cell called Little Ease, a lightless cell which was less than 4 foot cubed, which prevented any adult from standing, sitting, or lying. After some time in the squalor, he was taken to his old patron, the Earl of Leicester, and there he met Queen Elizabeth. His freedom and even promotion and prominence were all his if he would but forsake the Catholic faith. Campion refused and was returned to the Tower. There his tortures began. At least 2 times he was on the rack. Each time he was asked who had sheltered him, who had financed his trip to England. There were arrests made, but it is unclear whether they were names given by Campion or not. Campion requested a chance to publicly defend himself, and he was given that in September 1581. But he was also quite weakened by his tortures. Still, he made strong arguments and seemed to have made some progress in convincing his accusers. Philip Howard, Earl of Arundel, the future St. Philip Howard, was convinced by Campion's defense and returned to the Catholic faith, only to be martyred himself in 1595. The Privy Council could find no fault as his only crime was spiritual. They eventually started searching for accusers and found George Eliot, the man who had arrested him. On these accusations, he was indicted on November 14, 1581. Eliot testified to Campion's guilt and plot to overthrow the Queen. Campion defended himself, well nonetheless, and he was sentenced to be hanged, drawn, and quartered, just as Blessed John Story at Tyburn. Campion answered his sentence by saying, "In condemning us, you condemn all your own ancestors, all your ancient bishops and kings, and all that was once the glory of England, the island of saints, and the most devoted child of the See of Peter." Other English Catholics were also convicted at the trial, and upon hearing their sentence, they began singing the Te Deum. Campion and companions were dragged to Tyburn on December 1st. As they passed Newgate Arch, Campion raised himself as best he could to salute the statue of Our Lady, which was still there. When Campion arrived at the scaffold, he was taunted regarding his faith. One issue was the recent excommunication of Queen Elizabeth. He was asked about this, and he said he prayed for your queen and my queen. Just as Campion had attended John Story's trial, now a young Henry Walpole, the future Saint Henry Walpole, attended his execution. Walpole's white shirt was splattered with Campion's blood. Here is a daily prayer that St. Edmund Campion said. "I have made a free oblation of myself to your divine majesty, both of life and death, and I hope that you will give me grace and force to perform. This is all I desire. Amen. Remember, we are called to be saints. We just have to want it. Saint Edmund Campion, pray for us.